Hey everyone, LordCrom here. So, as you can tell from the title, I'm going to talk about 28 Weeks Later, the follow-up sequel to 28 Days Later that we got here in the States in 2003. They didn't bring back the actors from the original movie. They didn't bring back the original director. And usually that spells doom and gloom for any follow-up sequel. There are the rare occasions, such as from Alien to Aliens, and well, that's really what comes to mind at the moment. But they actually didn't skip a beat. The sequel, 28 Weeks Later, was really just as good as the first one was, and some people have even said it's better. It's a different film to a small degree. The first movie was much more small level story. You know, only a handful of people did you really deal with until close to the end, but even then, you know, with the military it wasn't that significant in growth, whereas by the time you get to the sequel in 28 Weeks Later, you're dealing with a significant American NATO force that's inside of the quarantine area, and you're dealing with sure, you're dealing with a small family similar to the 28 Days Later, but now you're also dealing with as much as 500 people that have been flown in to repopulate the city itself, the country itself. This one, the second one, was not as financially successful as the first one. The first one worldwide made about $82 million, and the sequel only made about $62 million worldwide. Of course, both films were made on a reasonably low budget, and therefore both were successful financially, which, both having been successful financially and also having been fairly well reviewed. Hopefully we'll see a third in this series. I know a lot of people will not compare this to, or will argue with you if you say it's a zombie film, because they're not necessarily zombies. They're virus. They're infected by virus. You know, even though they do seem to pass the disease on pretty similarly. You know, they can bite somebody and that person can become infected. At least that's what it appears like in the film. Mostly it seems like they vomit blood on them, and or they can even get it through saliva. I don't want to give away too many plot points of the film, obviously, for those who haven't seen it. I did really want to just recommend the film. I think it's you don't really have to have seen the original to enjoy or understand this film. I do highly recommend that you see the original, though. It's excellent. One small point that's kind of interesting that again compares to another zombie film, or not another zombie film, but a zombie film, is the intelligence of the individual infected. Recently, in George Romero's Land of the Dead, he dealt with zombies somewhat aware of, you know, their surroundings, their life. They weren't just, there was the one Big Daddy who wasn't just a shambling zombie who didn't, you know, was totally mindless. He seemed to have some knowledge to existence of those around him, or, you know, he was able to determine that if I pick this up and I use it, it's a weapon. And I think even in this one, I know it's a virus and they're not zombie, but it's kind of similar in that way, because in the first one you really didn't see that they were self-aware to the degree that you do. You didn't see that in 28 Days Later to the degree you do in 28 Weeks Later, where the father actually, after he's been infected, tracks the children. That was one point that I saw the small connection, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. I do kind of like my lumbering, dumb zombies but I'm not opposed to the fast zombies that we've recently seen in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, Resident Evil, and now the virus infected individuals in 28 days and 28 weeks later. But really, I don't know how I feel about the fact that the individuals are self-aware. It didn't seem to prevent the father from attacking his own child when he did finally catch up to him. But it showed that he was intelligent enough that if he, at one point, the son can see him, nobody else sees him, and he's aware enough that if he were to go head on, he's probably not going to get to the son and survive. He's going to die. So he actually hangs back, he disappears, and you don't see him until he pops up later. So self-aware that just a head-on, mindless attack probably would not have been a success. And so I kind of dangle with that. I love zombie films and the virus type films, I guess, as well. So, but I highly recommend it. Pretty good production values for seemingly being made with, you know, not blockbuster money like a lot of Hollywood films are made today. A great cast. The kids actually do pretty well in their roles. You know, they're not fake. You don't really see acting. You know, they actually seem to flow really well in their characters, and you know, you're not cringing at their performances. But I highly recommend the film, even for those that aren't into zombie/virus type films, horror films, you know, whatever you want to call them. And definitely check it out. And if you haven't seen 28 Days Later, I highly recommend that one as well. Thanks for listening. LordCrom out.